Welcome, everybody. As always, I am Langdon White, the host for the KBE Example Insider Show. And I'm a professor at Boston University, and I used to work at Red Hat. And I have a number of special guests today, because today is sadly, or perhaps excitedly, depending, our final episode. As we've been running for about 3 years, and so we wanted to get some of the people involved in the show on the show so we could talk a little bit about the run, and we're hoping one more will be joining us, and we'll see what happens. But if you wanted to go around and quickly introduce yourselves, let's maybe start with Daniel.
Hey, thanks for that. So I'm super happy to be here, and then I'm so excited to meet a lot of people here. It's a amazing journey for the last 3 years for the KBE stuff, KBE example, because I got a lot of a chance to advertise the KBE example when I meet a lot of people in the conferences, for example, KubeCon, but also customer meeting, because a lot of people are actually doing Kubernetes and the relevant ecosystem, but they don't know where they can find some tutorial or how to get started. So KubeCon example is a really good spot and place for them to get started. And then I was lucky because I could contribute to a lot of material into KubeCon example based on my experience. And more important thing is I got a chance to meet a lot of people, not only Red Hat champions, but also outside the community rock stars with the KBE. I'm so sad we're gonna turning down KBE anymore, but hopefully you guys enjoyed that KBE material and then keep going on your amazing journey with the Kubernetes.
Exactly. No, definitely. Well, so as Josh just recently joined us, we'll put him on stage first. And if you wanted to just introduce yourself, and and then we can kind of move on to the show.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Wood. I'm a developer advocate at Red Hat. And what I think about kind of wrapping up KBE after 3 years is we've got a good source of material about like kind of basics and concepts and the upstream project that relates to so many of the changes that have happened over even the last decade of kind of philosophical changes and the move towards DevOps and towards kind of SRE and automation practices. And in my own daily work, I've kind of moved away from talking about Kubernetes APIs and deployments and pods and into talking about kind of higher level abstractions that we're building on top of that. A lot of my work in the last year to 2 years has been focused on developer portals and kind of paying off some of the effort that we've asked developers to put into this DevOps thing and re-simplifying things. You used to just kind of compile an app and hand it off to ops to run it. Now you got to make a manifest and figure out how to get it deployed on a container orchestrator and build it into container and build it with automation and CI and CD. And there's all this accessory stuff. And so I think, like the trend is kind of about reifying and re-streamlining a lot of that stuff as we kind of move from what has become a common language of cloud services, the K8s API, and how we're going to build things in the future on top of it.
Yeah, simplification would very much be nice, right? Anybody who's been anywhere near it always appreciates it to be a little bit more straightforward, which is yes. So how are we going to Stu next?
Hey, Stu Miniman, part of the OpenShift team. I was part of the group that helped launch this. Gordon and I were on for episode 0. And yeah, crazy. We blink an eye 3 years later. Luckily, nothing in our industry ever changes.
Right.
3 years ago, we were going to launch this originally on TikTok, but no. And ChatGPT is taking over all our jobs. But it's been awesome. I've had the opportunity at some of the events to interact with the community. We got a little bit of swag over the years. We had some phenomenal customer usage of this, which we'll talk about in the highlights. But great to see this community. Langdon, thank you for all the work you did. We've got, some of our hosts here that have stepped in and really grown over the last few years. So it's been awesome to be watching this from kind of behind the scenes. And thank you for inviting me back, at the end.
Yeah, it's great. And Savita, why don't we have you next as speaking of hosts? for one of our common hosts and originally actually an interviewee, right?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Savita. So I was originally a guest, and that was scheduled before I joined Red Hat. And then when the episode was actually live, I was a part of Red Hat. So it's like working with my dream company, and I also wanted to do a lot of open source stuff. When I was on the show, it gave the for me it is about the community feeling, and I loved hearing about everyone's open source journey, how they get started, and also the pointers for anyone that is new who wants to get started. And there are like a lot of experience that were shared, and a lot of materials, a lot of links on how to get started, a lot of tricks and tips throughout the 3 years in the show. And I've been like going back and forth between co-hosting and being a guest. I think I've been like 2 or 3 times I have been a guest on the show, and I think I have been a co-host for at least 4 or 5 times. Um, and my favorite part is that you get to learn about many projects. I think the CNCF is at 180 projects right now, if I'm not wrong, and it is very hard to keep up. And previously, I used to be a platform engineer, so I was a little closer. And when I moved here, my focus was mostly on the application modernization. So I felt like I moved a bit farther from the cube, even though my work was all about getting people into Kubernetes adoption, OpenShift adoption. But I felt like I'm not doing hands-on work on Kubernetes anymore. So this show was one of the ways for me to keep in touch with what's happening in the Kubernetes ecosystem and what is also happening around the Kubernetes ecosystem, since like we have 180 projects to prove that the ecosystem is so huge. And
Yeah,
plus
thank
the
you.
community.
Oh.
Yeah, plus the community. So I
Right.
love that part.
Yeah, it's kind of was the mission of the show, right? Is to try to do that insider thing. And Gordon, who was kind of the impetus of the show. Who are you?
Well, yeah, well, one of the impetuses of this show, I should say. I mean, Stu, all of us had a big hand in that. But yeah, it's funny. Stu just took me down memory lane when he was talking about how all this came together 3.5 some odd years ago. And wow, what a journey it's been, right, guys? And, you know, just putting the site together and getting such wonderful training, free training up there. That's incidentally not going away. Let's be clear about that. KBE Insider, you know, this may be our quote unquote last episode, but the material on Cube by example, that's there. That's not going anywhere. And in fact, you know, we're hoping in the future to keep enriching that. My team's responsible for that to a degree. But yeah, gosh, over 3 some odd years of the show and everything. You know, it's funny with the swag, everything else. I was just we were laughing a little bit before we came on air, but I mean, here was the original mug that we got. You can see it's got some wear on my side of things. The Cube by example logo no longer there, thanks to my dishwasher inside. But yeah, gosh, so many fun memories throughout the years, and just a hearty thanks to our listeners who stuck by us through it all, and you know, keep returning and listening. These recordings will always be there as well, so we can always certainly go back to all this wonderful material that so many of the hosts here helped produce and create. And of course, a big thanks to each and every one of you guys here as well, and to our producer Caroline behind the shows, who really makes this happen and helps promote it as well. So big thanks to everyone involved. And I'm thrilled to be back for this final episode here.
Well, it's funny because so I'm in a hotel room because I was traveling, and it's funny. I think this is not the first time that I've done the show from a hotel room traveling, and you know, so it's funny with you guys pulling out the swag, right? And so I don't have, you know, much, right? But you know, my house has, you know, the cup and the, you know, and I actually particularly like the white one we did, which came off really well, but it's also now starting to lose all of its branding altogether, you know, from you run it through the dishwasher enough times. Yeah, so but kind of highlighting that, the you know, I think, at least for me, talking about kind of the favorite moment stuff, I think the stuff in the cars was a lot of fun. So when we, and Tam, who's not here, definitely her brainchild. We just set, we did KubeCon right in Motor City, and it was like, oh, why don't we drive around and interview people? And so huge shout out to Ford for supporting that initially, and loaning us the car to do it, and also being a guest in some of the interviews, and also to Audi later on for the Amsterdam one. And so they were just a lot of fun, slightly harrowing for me, in Detroit. I kept worried about driving accidentally into Canada and not having my passport and being like detained. And in Amsterdam, it was bikes, lots and lots and lots of bikes. But those interviews were a lot of fun. It was also nice because I got to meet and talk to some people who may not have crossed the kind of KBE Insider path normally, because normally we kind of go out and really hunt down, people to interview, based on what we know is going on in the community and stuff. Whereas with the car interviews, it was a little bit more back and forth, and we had a little bit more people reaching out, which was fun. So I really like the car interviews, and I kind of wanted to ask, to kind of go around and see some comments like that. Gordon, did you want to follow up on the cars?
You took some of my favorite moments there. I love when you were in Detroit and trying to avoid getting into Canada, and avoiding geese along the way too, if I recall correctly. Yes, so you can't forget that. But no, huge shout out to Tam Nguyen on my side of things, who helped. Really, that was her brainchild. So if listeners, viewers are familiar with comedians in cars getting coffee, I mean, this is the Kubernetes version, the cloud native version of that, and I thought it went over so well. Tam came to me one day and she said, "Hey, we're talking with Ford, we're talking with Satish Purnam, we're talking with Becky Reese over there, and they like the idea of maybe using a Mustang Mach-E and driving around the streets of Detroit and interviewing folks." And wow, I mean, what a great idea. And I thought, yeah, heck yeah, let's do it. So we got all the stickers, some great KBE Insider stickers, and put it all over Satish's Mach-E there. And as I understand it, I haven't checked with Satish in a little while now, but I think, and this was, November 22, so a little while ago now, but I think he's still driving around the streets of Detroit with these stickers on. So, I mean, if you see a Mach-E with KBE Insider stickers, that's what it's all about. Switching 6 months later to our friend Sebastian Kistler there at Audi, who lent us his Audi, or the company Audi, at least. I do remember one of my favorite moments. Sebastian is so fun. We had his red Audi e-tron that he drove up from Munich over to Amsterdam, where we were, which isn't a short drive necessarily. Was it 8 hours-ish, I think? You could Google Maps it. I'm not sure what it is, but I remember meeting with the video, waiting with the video team, waiting with Stu, waiting with a couple others. Langdon, you were there, Daniel, others. And we were just going, oh gosh, I hope Sebastian gets here. I hope there's no battery charge issues. I hope there's no speeding tickets, accidents, whatever else. But sure enough, he got there. We quickly slapped the stickers on his beautiful red Audi e-tron as well, and drove the streets. And Langdon, like you said, you masterfully drove the streets of Amsterdam, and
there's also some high quality, and shout out to the video team, high quality video editing as well, to ensure that there was no questionable activities.
So while you have that, and I promise I'll give up the mic here after this, but giant shout out as well to Mixer Media, who helped do all that. So Scott Mixer and Nate and Ryan and all those guys on that side, what a professional bunch. And I look forward to working with them beyond KBE Insider and so much more too. Gosh, they're so fun to work with.
They're really great. Kind of like, you end up with a lot of downtime in doing that kind of stuff, right? Where you're kind of just waiting for the next guest, or, you're waiting for, that you can start driving again or whatever. And just, they were just always there, always on top of it, never, never like distracted. And a lot of the times they were actually doing the video editing in real time. And so we would be seeing samples and stuff as we went along. Yeah. So as you said, a huge shout out to Mixer Media. I strongly recommend them. They're one of the best video teams I've ever worked with.
And just a final note here, Langdon, for me is, maybe we could even put up the video, the links to those videos in the chat here. I mean, I've got them here somewhere, but gosh, 10, 12 videos from Detroit, the same from Amsterdam, just all kinds of wonderful guests. Daniel, Savitha, I think you guys were guests in one of them, if I'm not in Detroit, perhaps. What a fun time with the KBE Insider on the road.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's Detroit is an amazing experience. Specifically, Langdon drive me to some around the city, but I really freaked out because I didn't bring my passport, and then we almost bored in Canada. But it was a great time to looking at around the city, but also we had a really good chat around the technical stuff, how to contribute back to community, but also how to bring into that great experience and knowledge into your production in the project companies.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I thought like I said, the variability in those particular interviews was really exciting. So Stu, I know you have to step out relatively soon. What would you like to surface as like one of your favorite bits in the show?
Thanks. So a couple of things. When Gordon came to me and we were first talking about KBE and KBE Insider, my feedback was, there's always a never-ending need for kind of the basics. How do you get more people on board? How do you help grow that community? But when you put content out there, the question always is like, are you reaching the audience? Is this useful, especially in an open source and open internet type era? So we talked about Ford from the car standpoint, but their usage of the information from KBE was so awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, and just for those that hadn't heard the story, because they actually talked about it on theCUBE and we did a press release on it, because our account team was talking to them and like, oh, we're using all of these tools to help learn. And our account teams were like, what tools? And they're like, KBE. And it was like, oh my God, like we didn't even tell you about that. And they're like, yeah, we found it. It was awesome. And we've doubled how many people understand all these basic concepts. So like, that's always the promise of, when you're live streaming and podcasting and blogging and creating, content and developer activity, that this will help people in their careers. And Ford was just a phenomenal case study on that from an end user standpoint. And then from a community standpoint, in our intros, Savitha, like, you talk about somebody that wasn't at Red Hat and now she is at Red Hat, and she went from, I used to, when I do the Cube, it was like, my joke was, hey, if I have you on a couple of times, you better be careful. You might end up being a host.
Right.
Being able to watch her grow into this role and that balance between, hey, I'm a guest, wait, I'm a host. We talked about, KBE Insider was supposed to be not this velvet rope that keeps you out, but let you into the velvet rope. So she was just really, showing that to there. So I love that, Langdon, you were the one constant in here, even though you changed roles, from when we started this to your role at BU. So we know that this ecosystem community, people change jobs, people change roles, but the ecosystem as a whole, the growth of this community. So I'm super excited as to what we accomplished and that this material lives on. I've got a few folks on my team that help contribute to like the security track and like that. So it's just awesome to see. It really ties into the power of open source and community, which of course is core to what we all do at Red Hat. So.
Right. So speaking, you mentioned Savitha, so we'll put her on the spot next. What some of the things you'd like to highlight, or what are some of the things that you kind of would draw out of the show that were really cool for you?
So for me, like everyone else, the favorite part is the car interviews. And that was the first time at least I got to see around Detroit. I was there for the conference, but I didn't even have time to go around and explore. But that was the one time, and throughout the interview, I think half the time I was looking at the camera and half the time I was just looking outside because the graffitis were beautiful. And also I was like a little panicking. Like it was just not about the passport. I am on a visa, so like I would be directly sent back home, you know, not even like have someone bring things or prove like I can come back things. So I was like a little worried about that. And the most important thing is that I came up with a um, uh, slogan for conveyor during that interview, which I still use. So the project is like a lane assist system for your app modernization journey. And I don't know how I came up with that, because probably I was inspired by the car that was like the Ford Marquis. Like I keep telling that if I buy a car, I would opt for that one. And then I don't know if they still manufacture it or not. I don't know. Like one of my friend was telling that it's not being manufactured. I need to check on that. But if I ever had an electric car, that would have been like Ford Marquis. So that's how I really like the show. And I also, one of the things that was really good for me, or like really that kept me in the show, is that I have met and worked with so many guests that we have brought on the show. And sometimes I have worked with them professionally. For example, Shasha Grune, who is also a senior software engineer at Red Hat, and he is the co-chair for SIG release of Kubernetes. So for some of you who don't know, I was a release lead. I was in the release cycle for 5 terms, which was like about 1.5 years. And I have interacted with him on often, but I never got to know him as a person. So when I was a co-host on one of the shows where he was a guest, I got to know him as a person, and that was all about this show. Like that was the show for me. Like you connect with the person more than their job, more than their open source responsibility. So that is one of my favorite episode. And I do have another one where we were talking about eBPF, because I have the big book and I always wanted to learn, and I still haven't gotten to it. But it was so fun learning about things, and we even talked about uh, stuff like cars don't fly um, during that episode. Like if anyone has watched Fast and Furious series franchise, you would know that there is dialogue. They said the cars don't fly, but they'd have a scene where the cars are actually being airdropped. Um, I know it's not probably possible, but it was a good TV movie show. Um, yeah, it's this show is really close to me, and even we got to present at Linux Foundation Member Summit. Tam and I got a chance to talk about KBE Insider there. There were so many people who are interested in learning how to have an inner source community, as well as like a community that is focused towards learning and focused towards all the open source technology. And how do you keep the a line with from blurring, right? So you have something that's sponsored by a company, but you don't want to have all sponsored like the products. You want to focus on open source projects. So we did have a session which was really, really great. I don't know if we have recording for that. If we have, I'll just flop it up or like tweet it sometime. But it was a really good one.
Yeah.
So for me, it's full of memories. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't mean
that's
to like,
awesome.
yeah.
I wanted to, speaking of the Maquis, I think as a direct result of the show is why the mayor of Boston, that's the car she chose as her like, kind of like mayoral transport or whatever is the Maquis, and I'm pretty sure it's because of the KBE Insider that we did.
Well, naturally, I mean,
right. But yeah, so great car. I had not heard that it was having any trouble in production, but it is a good car. It was definitely fun to drive. All right, Josh, what about you? What would you highlight from the show?
Well, I think kind of like Savita had mentioned, one of the cool things about the few episodes I was able to host and co-host with you, Langdon, is there were some folks I had worked with, even somewhat intensively in the case of Michael Gash, who came on and talked to us about their work with the Civ project, which is kind of this testing framework for controllers on Kubernetes. And I'll kind of come back to that technical side, but I had known Michael since my time at CoreOS without ever actually meeting him or having really any personal conversations with him. Just as Savita was saying, I wrote a book about operators with O'Reilly. Michael was one of the reviewers and blurbed the back of it. And as we continued that work on operators, which are sort of like say a mechanism or a pattern that's like kind of centered around extending the Kubernetes API, creating custom controllers, being able to do more things and wider work patterns, but within kind of Kubernetes terms and in terms of that sort of increasingly lingua franca API. They have this framework or test harness for testing those custom controllers. And we had used that in some of our operators' work. So then actually getting to sort of see Michael's face and like talk to him about how he got started, how they kind of analyze the open source component of what they're doing in their project and product with Civ, was just kind of, it was interesting after maybe 5 years of back and forth and sharing pretty high level ideas and doing some pretty important work without really knowing anything about Michael and like in a personal way. And then I think also we did an episode with Edith Levine from Solo IO, and of KBE episodes in my opinion, like that I've watched, hosted, been involved in, that episode was really kind of business focused and was a lot about Edith's insights in founding her organization and how they run it and how open source related to that. And we maybe didn't peel into a lot of technical detail. How do you use this? So, how do you put it in your projects? How do you link to this library? And we talked more about kind of the business point of view, and that's not my usual area. Like, I'm very much hands-on technical, and I'm not thinking about how does this project relate to the industry strategically. And there were a lot of cool insights from Adit and from her work in Solo IO and that set of interviews.
Cool. Yeah, Sue, just before you go, where can we find you next? Or, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Langdon, and apologies, I do have to run because I've got another live stream at the top of the hour. It's one called In the Clouds. Like this one, it's one that Chris Short started, and I took over as the interviewer for it. So it used to be bi-weekly. It's more like once a month now, and I happen to have on Brian Stevens, who many in the community know. I met him when he was CTO of Red Hat. He went on to be CTO of Google Cloud, and he's now CEO of an AI called Magic, again, based here in the Boston area, came out of MIT. So super excited to talk about VLLMs and open source and AI and everything. And I'll have another episode in a couple of weeks on the latest OpenShift release. So I'm super easy to find. Since this one started, I kind of dropped. X is my former platform, but In the Clouds is, if you go to red.ht/intheclouds, you can find that one. And always looking for more community feedback and suggestions on guests. And we've got other live streams going on throughout the show. So thanks for having me. And thank you, KBE community. It's been a great ride.
Thanks, Stu. So Daniel, what would what would some of the highlights for you have been, over the course of the years of the show?
I think it's that people already touch a lot of stuff, and then one of my great experience to show. So it really good opportunity for me to bring some of the community hero. For example, I met Billy, who is a founder Knative project, because at a time I was so into serverless and then how to bring Java application into serverless world. Not only Kubernetes, but also hybrid serverless platform like Amazon Lambda on OpenShift serverless, something like that. And then I met him as a part of the KubeCon North America many years ago, but KBE gave me some idea. Okay, we can bring him into the show and then share his achievements and then how to starting to develop any kind of application into serverless, because a lot of people misunderstand the use cases and benefit of serverless at a time. Okay, serverless is just like a hello world application, and then I need to pay a lot of money for like some Amazon Lambda thing, but that's not true. So we actually luckily invited him into the show and then explain the knowledge of serverless, but also So great thing and the bright things of open source project as a part of CNCF. So that is a great opportunity because it's not only showcasing or educating some new knowledge to the show, but also uh, it more interactive, some communication with people. And then after that, we got a huge feedback and great comment from the show, which allowed us to have more inspiration how do we can evolve existing KBE, but not only material but also show itself.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. I actually then started to see them at the various KubeCons or whatever I went to, and he's a fun guy as well as really interesting technically as well. And so that was a great episode. One I just wanted to quickly highlight was I think a big change for the industry was the CNCF. A couple of people, or more than a couple, but launched a new group, like a working group within the CNCF for the deaf and hard of hearing, and they've managed to get signing as part of a lot of the conferences, a lot of the KubeCon conferences, so that, or a lot of talks. I think in the word lecture, I'm like, that's not the right word. But a lot of the talks to actually have at least ASL, signing as a for the deaf and hard of hearing, and we had them actually on the show just before Christmas, I think last year, and it was really interesting. I think, did I host that alone? I might have hosted that alone because we also had the interpreter on the show and two of the founding members of that group, and so I thought that was a really awesome experience. It was just, it's not a lot where we spend a lot of time on accessibility in the tech industry, and so I really appreciated having them on the show, and I really appreciated the support. And the force behind that was somebody who we also had on the show a while back from just blanked on the name. I should have looked it up first. All right, well, I'll come back to it in a second. But yeah, so we, so that was really very cool. Like I said, it was a really interesting episode, and I'll throw the link to that episode in a second. So
while you're finding that link, Langdon, I'll say that your transformation from tech guy to professor is now officially complete. Now that you're calling things lectures as opposed to
right, exactly,
as opposed to shows and sessions, I'm all for it. I love it.
Right.
So,
exactly. Those were some of, I think, our various highlights. Obviously, there was a lot of things about the show in general that I'm missing, right? I mean, there was a ton of different really cool events, a lot of tech that I would never have been exposed to except doing the interviews, which I thought was really a lot of fun. But in kind of closing, I think, with the end of the show, where can we find all of you next? And maybe Gordon, we'll start with you.
Yeah, gosh, good question. So hopefully at KubeCons going forward, I'm always trying to, as all of us are, trying to be there for that. But I can tell you that, again, just to reiterate what I said before, KBE is not going away. Our team is still managing that. And if you guys, any of the listeners out there, of course, we encourage you to pass along the information to friends, colleagues, whomever else. There's 20 plus learning paths there ready for consumption. And if you've got good ideas for more, we're all ears, right? So you can always reach us through the KBE site. I think there's a contact us area there, or heck, just find me on LinkedIn. You can find me there, and I always love to talk about KBE. It's one of my, I've been at Red Hat a long time, and this is perhaps my favorite project in my long tenure, and working with all of you wonderful people here on the screen and the listeners and participants and everything else. It's just something I always hold near and dear, and I'm very grateful that I was able to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, no community can do really anything without the community contributing, right? So,
exactly.
there's always the opportunity. I mean, Ford did a lot of contribution of content. I think we're always looking for more. So please do reach out. How about you, Daniel? Where are you going to be kind of next on the these cool tubes we call the internet?
Yeah, I got some upcoming conferences. For example, next month, I'm going to go to Berlin. There are VR developers conference. I think there are more than 15,000 people, like developers and a lot of IT folks. It will be great opportunity to meet a lot of people. In case you are will be there, yeah, happy to meet and then have some conversation with any cloud knowledge or practice experience. But also, also I assuming a lot of people aware of Red Hat AI stuff. So yeah, a couple of months ago in Denver, Red Hat Summit, we announced a big shining stuff, Red Hat AI, like OpenShift AI, Red Hat AI, and Lightspeed, among others, Instructor Lab and LLM stuff. So my team and then among others, so we are working hardly to creating a lot of great demos and material around the AI portfolio. And then not only developer, but also platform engineer and even AI builders, like AI model builder, like some of the data scientists, but you don't have any experience around like Python or they like some AI model stuff. So stay tuned. And then you can follow my Twitter and YouTube channel and any social media. I will be everywhere on internet. And then hopefully see you guys in soon enough. And then yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah. And how about you, Josh? Where will we find you next? Besides, in a book.
Well, I thought it was actually this is not necessarily a forum where I would have thought to mention LinkedIn. But for the wider community and for folks who want to stay in touch with some of us, you can find me on LinkedIn. And that might be a good way if you had questions about operators or Kubernetes API stuff and kind of the stuff I've worked on the most. The next thing I'll talk about is going to be a book. We have a new book out that kind of reflects what I was referring to a little earlier. What I think is kind of it's not a generational change, but it is a chronological change where we've matured a lot of these base APIs and they become familiar to at least the kind of leading edge of the industry, like the Kubernetes API, the ways of extending it with operators and kind of that pattern and CRDs. That I think a lot of the work that's interesting and to me right now, and I think important for developers, is around sort of tying things together, simplifying them, presenting them in one place. And a big effort in the industry around that has been this idea of developer platforms or internal developer platforms. We saw a lot of work open source and upstream at Spotify with this project called Backstage that kind of brings together all of these pieces of what you might call cloud native development, from automated builds all the way to deployments and monitoring things as they're running, and what pieces do you need if you're onboarding and joining a team to put your kit together to start building things the way that team does. How does that team solidify and identify patterns and make them repeatable and available to folks? So those ideas around developer platforms, Red Hat's own developer hub that's based on that Backstage upstream open source stuff, that's what our latest book is about. And Langdon, since I can't drop it in the chat, I'll forward you the link and you can drop it into the public side of the chat. You can download a copy of the new Developer Portals book right at this link or at developers.redhat.com. It'll be very easy to find it. In the fall, we'll do kind of a companion edition around the platform engineering side. If you want to deploy this stuff and provide it to your teams, how do you identify those patterns? How do you package them up and make them reusable? The kind of telling the admin and platform engineering side of the developer platform story. So as you can see, I've had a pretty intensive focus on one particular area over the last 12 or 18 months, to the extent it's hard for me to talk about anything else.
Yeah, although interestingly, right, like over the last year-ish, there were at least 6 episodes where Backstage came up organically in the conversation with people. And so it is definitely a place to watch. It is definitely a problem people are trying to solve. We have a somewhat unique problem at the U, right, where I kind of I jokingly refer to as like the consulting company with the worst turnover in the entire world. We lose 300 employees every 3 months. but we have that continuity problem. So these developer portals and kind of, that was a hot thing, 10 years ago, more than that, maybe even. But I really am glad to see it kind of coming back around and maybe something big coming out of that. So definitely a space to watch. It was something I was looking forward to getting more into as we did more of the show. But it is definitely something to check out if you're not looking at it already. Savita, what about you? What are you going to be working on next? I mean, I have a theory that you're just going to be replacing all of us. Is what you're working on?
No, I would never do that because it would be fun to grow with everyone, right? Than to replace and be an AI clone, like of me in all the places. No, but I am working on something related to AI. So I work on Conveyor, which actually helps big organizations move their workloads to Kubernetes and OpenShift. So we are actually doing something very interesting. We are integrating LLMs to provide automated code suggestions. So that's the area where I'm focusing on. And I think I have a hunch that I'm going to work with Daniel O on that a little bit for his amazing demos and stuff. And I am also very interested in environmental sustainability. So CNCF has a tag for that. And I am a blog lead in one of their working groups. So I help some of the awesome environmental related, this is related to the Kubernetes ecosystem side of things, how you can monitor the emissions that's coming out of the workloads and so, stuff like that. So I am contributing a little bit there. So if you want to find me, you can always find me in the Kubernetes Slack, CNCF Slack, or LinkedIn. And everywhere is just my same name, except for Twitter. If you want to find me on Twitter or X, it's a Coffee Art Girl. So that's where you can find me.
It's always about the coffee. I think that's true for everyone. I wanted to also mention, sorry, so Catherine of Buoyant is who kind of, I think was a big person behind the scenes on kind of launching the Hard of Hearing working group. And she's also been really supportive of me doing stuff in the educational sector. So kind of coming to myself, one of the things that we should be launching very soon is the Linux Foundation is going to be offering an accreditation for universities around cybersecurity and cloud native development. And so if you basically go meet the criteria, the Linux Foundation will certify that your university teaches, if you take the right courses, teaches enough things about cloud native development or about cybersecurity that you are certified about it, right? So like, as in it covers all of the right bases. And so we're going to be launching that. It should be going live in a relatively soft launch in the next couple of weeks. But then at KubeCon in wherever it is in the fall.
Salt Lake, I think.
Salt Lake, yes. We're hopefully going to be on stage doing a big splash about the accreditation with hopefully some universities accredited. And then we also are going to be doing a learning day or a uni day or whatever you want to call it, which will be like a co-located event with KubeCon, which will be both professional training kind of content, but also like university education content related to cloud native development and cybersecurity, specifically in the context of Kubernetes and kind of in the cloud. But the idea is it's broader, right? It's much more at a CNCF level or Linux Foundation level, not just Kubernetes, but how do you do cloud native development in general, or cybersecurity in general, not just in those kind of. Kubernetes is pretty huge, so I hesitate to call it a niche per se, but not just that niche, just kind of cloud in general. And so So that's the big stuff I'm doing. Obviously, I will also be teaching more in the fall, and I'll be doing, I think I'm going to be doing a data science and journalism class, which we've had for a few years now, where occasionally I'll be the data science side instructor, where we have a journalist on the other side, and it's data-driven journalism. So basically, you're researching through big data sets and looking for anomalies or trying to understand how things are working, and then news articles are being produced out of it. This class actually has a long history of being published in places like the Boston Globe. So it's pretty cool. I think as an undergrad to get a byline in someplace like the Boston Globe, I would have been, over the moon. But with that, I think that's pretty much our show for today. And the last one, and we'll be sorry to see all of you go.
Hey, Brandon, just if I may, I just want to advertise one more thing.
Okay.
Yeah, also a lot of developers and actually they're willing to go to KubeCon, but a lot of people are actually after attending KubeCon, wow, there's just so much amazing stuff, but I don't see any some developer stuff, a lot of things here because most likely platform stuff, and then a platform engineering day and ArgoCon, Backstage Con, most likely, hey, you can bring any application into the platform and then we can take care of them. But the still developer looking for some nice and cool tools will make it better life. So that's exactly some of my colleagues and we created a new working group under CNCF. So application development working group under technical application delivery, like a TOC. So our goal is to help developers and a cloud native architect and developers to make their life better, introduce some best practices and then relevant tool under CNCF project, because you can go to CNCF landscape. There are huge projects and tools, maybe too many choices for you. So that's we exactly provide some new categorized and tools and project. For example, development environment and the build application and the automating and testing, debugging. It's more like an in-loop process, a little bit more like an out-of-loop as well. So yeah, feel free to join our working group. Luckily, I'm one of the co-chairs. We are always welcome to any developers, regardless of Java, .NET, Python, and even COBOL. And then you can just join the Cadence call. We have a bi-weekly call. I just put on the chat our GitHub repo. You can find all details, how to join the call, how to contribute back to working group as core members. And then maybe one day you can be like a co-chairs, possibly. Okay, yeah, that's, I don't want to advertise one more thing. Thanks for giving some more time. That's
I've always it's always a challenge with something like Kubernetes, right? Because being somebody who's more on the application development side, right, Kubernetes is much more infrastructure side. It's the same reasoning behind some of the cloud native education stuff that we're doing too, is to try to show people how you build things for Kubernetes, like on top of it, not just build Kubernetes itself. So it's really exciting to hear. But with that,
Langdon, before I know you're trying to wrap, and we will wrap, but I would be remiss if we didn't say thank you to you as well for all of your efforts. I mean, you were here for, I think, every single KBE Insider episode, all the car rides. I don't know how you avoided the geese, stayed out of Canada, all the stuff, the bicyclists in Amsterdam. Just thank you from all of us to you for all of your support as a Red Hatter, as a Boston University professor, everything. This would not have been possible without you. So a big thank you for all of
Yeah, for sure, Langdon. I want to second that and add to it the note that in addition to all of your effort and work and having co-hosted or solo hosted almost every episode of KBE Insider, if you go back and you watch the 2 or 3 episodes that I was on with, I kept trying out different ways to pronounce your name, even though there's nothing particularly difficult about pronouncing your name. You've been Landon and Langdon. Is the G silent? I don't know why I made it so complicated, but you never even blinked. Even the time I called you Ralph, and I don't know what.
Right. It is kind of amazing the number of times I call people and they think I say Michael, but
And And likewise, Gordon and Josh has summarized it very well. Thank you, Langdon. And I always think of the novels, Dan Brown novels. If you have read, it's like sci-fi novels, and the main character's name is, the surname is Langdon, I think. I forgot the first name. Yeah, the surname is Langdon. And there are like movies about like demons and angels, I think, and like Inferno. Like there are many. I read the books and I'm not sure what the movie names are. So I always think of that particular series of novels. It took a while for me to come out of it and realize that this is his first name, not his like surname. So thank you, Langdon. And I also want to say thanks to Tam Nguyen, Caroline King, and also Mina Kamarkan, if I got her name
Yep.
the name last correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I just echoing. Yeah, so we got so lucky have the amazing Professor Langdon. And
Well, I
all you
appreciate
guys.
that, and I definitely appreciate all of you, Caroline, who's also saying thank you in the background, but so much. And Tam was a great, I don't know, cohort, or conspirator, or kind of working together on this show for so long. I really miss working with her. And it's been a lot of fun. And but with that, I think we should wave and say good night, as they say.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
everyone.